I appreciate your invitation. We live in an unprecedented economic crisis that seems to question economic theory at its core. In the post-Second World War years, Keynesianism at first and neoliberalism later gave to advanced capitalism a period of important economic growth. Neoliberalism hit the rocks in 2008, dealing a near mortal blow to capitalism. We should, however, resist the temptation to attribute the crisis to neoliberal greed, which implies that had there been a better management of capitalism, all would be well. The real question is why neoliberalism had such an unquestioned sway for more than a quarter of a century. These questions send us back to Marx. According to Marx, the rate of profit has a tendency to fall, leading the economy to a process of destroying what it has built all the previous period. Marx would say in Grundrisse, page 748, that the law of falling rate of profit is in every respect the most important law in political economy and the most essential for understanding the most difficult relations. It is the most important law from the historical standpoint. It is a law which, despite its simplicity, has never before been grasped and even less consciously articulated. The main argument now of me is that this tendency in its long-term secular guise, it has been underlying all economic developments since the crisis of the 1970s. This crisis is crucial in understanding the contemporary crisis. By 1974, profitability in advanced capitalist countries had fallen at an average by more than 40% from its peak in 1965. The belief of the strategies of capital that after the World War they were done with the unsolvable contradictions of capital expansion was not borne out by reality. Marx was on the scene again. His theory of the tendency of the rate of profit to fall resurfaced in heated discussions among Marxist economists. In 1970s, the ghost of another 1930s was present again. The response of world's capitalist class was decisive. By attacking the salaries and general benefits of the working class, they tried to restore profitability. Since then, the growth of salaries in advanced capitalist countries has been much lower than economic expansion, and in the USA, they have practically remained stagnant for all these decades. By doing that, though, cutting the salaries of the working class on a world scale, they simply decrease the purchasing power of the world market in relation to total production, exacerbating the problem of falling profitability. By the end of the 1970s, beginning of the 1980s, the situation was desperate. Unemployment figures at that time in the US and other advanced capitalist countries still stand higher than today. Accidental events, though, of the 1970s paved the way for solutions that the strategies of capital believed they could be permanent. One of them was the abolition of gold standard, and the second one, the abolition of all restrictions in relation to the movement of capital. In this new environment, they were able to move capital out of high-cost, low profitability lines of material production, especially toward the financial services, and transfer production in countries like China with wages tens of times lower than in the USA, transforming USA to an economy of services. And through the development of securitized financial markets and the internationalization of the American finance, USA began borrowing from the periphery by selling securities which represented artificially high values. By borrowing, the American economic machine reinforced demand in USA and hence production, but also in the whole world. They gave income to countries like China, Germany, etc., enabling them to come in their turn, buy these American securities, mortgage-backed securities in their greatest part, related to the building industry, and the circle would continue. John Varoufakis, a very famous, I suppose, Greek academic, says in his famous book, I read the quote, it was a very unstable system to survive. It was unstable system to be able to survive forever. but was a system which for decades contributed to the maintenance of a world tranquility, though unstable, which depended on the continued voluntary flow of capital, something that someone could interpret as gifts of servitude instead of taxes, from the world periphery towards the American metropolis, gifts which the metropolis in its turn uses, consumes, in order to keep the periphery flourishing. Larry McDonald, one of the presidents of Lehman Brothers, and I really like to use conclusions of these people and of very serious right-wing economists. You don't need anything else to understand what is going on. This Larry McDonald, the vice president of Lehman Brothers, characterized the building industry of USA as the new ATM machines of the American population. He could state in his book, Colossal Failure of Common Sense, I read the quote, money which was not real money, prices of houses which were not real prices, mortgages which were not based on any definition of reality. In the year 2006, he continues, probably 50% of the growth of the United States was bogus, artificial, CDOs and all these kind of securities. This was the way through which the world system developed after the 1970s. That was the way companies were depicting profit again. And now I go to a very, very special man, John Idwell. He's the president of, he was at least the president of Queen's College of Cambridge, right-wing guy, but very concrete in his conclusions. And Lawrence Taylor, since 2000, they published a book, Global Finance at Risk, warning about the collapse of 2008. Very serious people. They don't have suggestions, socialist suggestions, but they describe the presence and the contradictions of the development of the last decades in a very wonderful way, I suppose. So I read the quote by John Idwell and Lawrence. The US borrowing strategy has become, in 2000 now, an important element in keeping up demand around the world. If the US strategy was forced to change, it would have serious implications for the future stability and growth of global economy, 2000. And this strategy did change, not because, of course, the economic strategies of USA decided not to borrow money anymore, but because the poor holders of mortgage loans in the USA could not pay their installments for the money they had borrowed to build their houses. That was, unbelievable, believe it or not, that was the prelude to the 2008 crash. Tens and hundreds of thousands, there are no accurate figures, of these poor people would leave the keys of their houses in the mailbox and disappear. This is how fragile was the model that kept the world economy going. 2000 marked a decisive end in this model. Again from Varoufakis, 2008, to say it in a more simple way, has been proved to be the 1929 of our generation, with an economic ending that may be even worse than the one of 1929. Varoufakis end of. Now, this proposition, this law of Marx is a very serious one. The collapsed ability of capitalism to create profit is a crucial aspect. It should not be faced as a theoretical abstraction. It is the reality of today. It underlines the inability of capitalism to turn into growth again. It is the source of the unprecedented debt that has piled up in sums that could never be repaid. A debt that was necessary to support demand and hence production today. A debt that assigned to future generations the responsibility to pay for today's consumption. A debt that has colonized the future, as academic Fotis Lysandrou formulated once in Cyprus. Exiting the Eurozone, the inability of the capitalist market to sustain itself at the beginning of a process in which capitalism will be destroying what it has built in the previous period, Marx, underscores the world as well as the European economic developments of today. That's why the suggestion of abandoning the Eurozone cannot in any way give an answer to the problem at hand, to the problem of our era. The proponents of this strategy point towards the surplus of Germany and the deficits and huge accumulation of debt of the European South. But USA is highly indebted as well. It just happened that at the beginning of the world economic crisis, some countries found themselves as the beneficiaries of the unsustainable neoliberal model. In the same way, the economic growth of USA, as of the capitalist world, dependent on USA borrowing from the rest of the world, in the same way the growth of Germany dependent on US borrowing as well as on the borrowing of the European South. The end of this game will very soon bring Germany's growth to an end. The proponents of the exit strategy provide the argument that by doing that, someone gains two advantages: independence in monetary policy and ability to take trade measures against its opponents, against other nations. Even if we don't take into consideration the central problem of world capitalism, as I tried to explain above, yes, you will have the ability to print money. The more you print, the more its value will vanish, especially considering the world economic crisis and that there is no friendly way of exiting the euro. If it happened to exit the euro, it would be under memorandum obligations. Concerning the ability now to implement trade restrictions, it will be the way to hell. In a period of a general economic expansion, you might stand a chance not to face severe retaliations, but under the current crisis, trade wars will be unavoidable and will be the prelude to real wars. Exiting the Eurozone is a capitalist recipe which leads to an impasse as big as the austerity measures do. The proposal of exiting the Eurozone creates also the illusion that there can be isolated national solutions to the crisis, and I'm very happy not to hear such similar suggestions from this seminar today. There is no such a possibility of isolated national solutions. The proposal of exiting the Eurozone also reinforces the picture that the nationalists in each country create, that the source of the European misfortune are other nations, Germany, for example, the descendants of Hitler, in disorient from the target, which must be the opposition to world capitalism. Exiting the Eurozone is not an option to the socialists. It will be an option, in brackets, an option to the national strategies of capital when they would realize that agreed solutions to handle the European crisis are not anymore feasible. It will be an option that will introduce Europe to a stage of barbarism, each one against all others for survival. A repetition of world wars will be on the agenda. Even if a country proceeds with socialist measures, it cannot hope for a long-term survival if it gets isolated. Of course, it is highly probable that the leftist government in Cyprus, or a government, so to speak, of Syriza in Greece, will be expelled from the Eurozone if they proceed with measures like nationalization of the banking system. If this is the case, it will have to depend on the assistance of the European movement. That is why it is crucial for the Cypriot movement, as well as for any other European movement, to have a European orientation of their struggle, as well as to build European alliances. Today is probably the time to revisit the concept of world revolution and formulate an international strategy for exit from the crisis. Today, much more than in 1917, it is impossible to talk about national socialist transformation, isolated from the rest of the world. Any radical break with capitalist policies will send revolutionary ripples across Europe and across the world with unprecedented speed. The rapid spread of the Arab Spring is the sort of the model we will be facing in the near future. The problem of debt, again, should be in the center of the discussions of the international socialists, and its existence was necessary for world capitalism to survive, as I tried to explain before. It was not the problem of any single state. It should be abolished in an agreed way. Its existence is a formidable barrier to further development, not only of the indebted countries, but of the world system. Cyprus, society, economy, and the national question. It's 7 minutes.
That's fine.
Okay. The left in Cyprus should be guided by internationalist logic in formulating its program. There is no Cyprus exit from the crisis unless European policies change drastically. This should not lead us, of course, into a passive waiting strategy. On the contrary, it is essential that we follow an active strategy of bold initiatives that will aim at showing in practice what can be done for the whole European left to see, and hopefully mobilized and linked with the struggle of the Cypriot left. Ironically, as Panagiotis said, most of the economic measures needed for recovery will not be alien to present-day capitalist experience. Some of them have been used in a pragmatic way as remedy for the crisis. The difference, of course, will lie in the political and social strategies of the government of the left, as opposed to the political and social aims of the Cypriot and European bourgeoisie. Let us see some of them. Nationalization of the banking system, as Panagiotis said. This has already been used in a miserly way by a capitalist in Cyprus by nationalizing Popular Bank and subsequently transferring its assets to the Bank of Cyprus. The left has only to extend the principle to the whole banking sector and place it under some kind of social control. Progressive heavy taxation of incomes above a certain threshold. Today's tax system relies on low incomes for most of its revenues, while the filthy rich can get away with murder. Tax the church income and property, which in Cyprus is a huge property, and probably nationalize most of it. Reform the semi-governmental and governmental organizations. Reform the semi-governmental organizations not to get them ready for privatization, but on the contrary, in order to extend social control and minimize corruption. Provide assistance to individual and small enterprises in order to deal with the debts that are beyond their means. Scrutinize external debt and renegotiate terms of payment. Stop payment where that becomes necessary. Reach common understanding with other European left parties and movements. Political climate. Now, concerning the present political scene, there is important demoralization you have to accept. Until a year ago, the leftist government of Dimitris Christofias was in office. Its election in 2008 coincided with the beginning of the world crisis. In 2013, the collapse that Panagiotis described took place, and the lives of people changed from one day to the next. I don't think that in any other country of Europe or anywhere else the heat was so severe in such a short time. The leftist government was totally unprepared for the situation and left the office in disgrace. There is an unprecedented discontent among the rank and file of Agel, but there is no mass alternative to the left. The battle, for the time being, will be waged within its ranks. There were some important mobilizations over the last couple of months, but the general feeling is that of hopelessness. The main slogan of the left now in opposition, that is the slogan, "Throw the Troika out of Cyprus," is not convincing. People understand that without the financial assistance of Troika, we are in deep trouble, and there is no convincing alternative strategy. Agel, the leftist party that was in government, also plays with the dangerous slogan proposition of abandoning the Eurozone. It tries to provide theoretical background for this suggestion with economic studies of doubtful relevance. I don't really know how to characterize this proposal. Even for a country of the size of Spain, that would be a dead end. To support such a measure for Cyprus, it is nothing more than a joke. It is not accidental, though, that the leftist Agel is leaning towards such a proposal. In its unwillingness to lead a class struggle against the system, it finds a level that distinguishes it from the right-wing government, satisfying the eagerness of its supporters for oppositional policies. It is exactly in the opposite road of exiting the euro that the left should seek the solution to the present crisis. In a united Europe and eventually in a united world, the future of Europe and of the world could not be based on nations competing each other economically. Cyprus, as in any other country, has a future under pan-European planning of financing and investment, with banks under the control of society and money playing the mere role of exchange mediator. We give emphasis in our articles in explaining that to the Cypriot movement. The slogan, as well as the effort for the unity of the left, it was mentioned here a couple of times. It is a crucial aspect of the policies of the left. As long as the program of the left political party or organization that puts this slogan forward is understood by the masses through their experience to give a way out of the crisis, then the slogan for the unity of the left becomes a powerful weapon in the effort to erase obstacles put forward by sectarian leaderships like the one of Kukué in Greece, or any other leftist leadership which is unwilling to go along the road of class struggle. Last week, the Parliament of Cyprus gave the authority to the government to proceed with privatizing 3 of its biggest assets. That was a big blow, and it practically opens the way for full-scale privatizations. There is already an important disillusionment in regard to the abilities of the new right-wing government to offer solutions. In regard now to the national question, there is an active process of negotiations again. It seems that the United States is exercising huge pressure. Their tenuous control over a whole geographical area, from Tunisia, Egypt, up to the Middle East and Iran, makes Cyprus very important as a place of stability. The discovery of oil and gas reserves in Cyprus makes the matter even more urgent. The support that the USA gives to the new process, though, should not lead the left to opposing it. On the contrary, the left should give its support to the process. Anything else will play lip service to nationalism. It will play lip service to what we have been hearing as Cypriot, Greek Cypriot, since we were born, that there is a world conspiracy together with the Turks to hurt the holy motherland, little motherland of ours. The left should give its support to the negotiations. And based on its unavoidable limitations, because negotiations are taking place among nationalist governments, try to mobilize the movement in collaboration with the Turkish Cypriot left at both sides of the barricades in support of a solution of bizonal, bicommunal federation, which has been the agreed framework for decades. It is more urgent than ever before to demolish the barricades, whose existence increases the danger of the economic crisis turning to a national conflict, and build bridges with the Turkish Cypriot labor movement. My last sentence. For the first time for more than half a century, discussions on the death agony of capitalism are based firmly in economic sphere, and are directly mirrored in militant grassroots political action that threatens the system itself. This action is still divorced from the theoretical discussion that is taking place with renewed vigor among Marxist intellectuals, and for the moment produces mixed results. It will not be long before the two come together to form a formidable force that will change capitalism, will challenge capitalism again in a serious fashion. Thank you very much.